A routine flight, a clear day over the Midwest sky, 36,000 feet above the ground, a Boeing 737 MAX cruises smoothly along its route. Inside, passengers sip coffee, scroll through phones, and watch the clouds drift below. Then, suddenly, a deafening crack, the cockpit window shatters, the aircraft lurches, and one of the pilots is injured. Moments later, the crew declares an emergency, but when investigators examine the damage, they realize something strange. Whatever struck the aircraft wasn't supposed to exist at that altitude. What hit the plane at 36,000 feet? And could it happen again? The incident, it was October 18th, 2025. United Airlines Flight 515, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, was cruising en route from Denver to Chicago. At approximately 1:15 p.m. local time, as the aircraft crossed over Nebraska airspace, air traffic control recorded a sudden distress call. The captain reported a cockpit windshield strike, severe enough to cause depressurization risk and minor injuries to one pilot. Passengers later described feeling the aircraft drop slightly, then stabilize as the crew donned oxygen masks and began a rapid descent toward a lower, breathable altitude. Within minutes, they diverted to Des Moines International Airport for an emergency landing. Thankfully, all passengers survived, and the injured pilot was treated for facial cuts and bruises. At first glance, it looked like a high-altitude bird strike, or perhaps a piece of debris. But experts immediately questioned that theory. At 36,000 feet, the cruising altitude of most commercial jets, birds can't survive. Even migratory geese rarely fly higher than 29,000 feet, and radar showed no avian activity in the area. So what exactly slammed into the cockpit of Flight 515? The immediate response. Once the aircraft was safely on the ground, engineers and investigators from the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) and the National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) arrived. They expected to find a clean impact signature, a trace of metal, ice, or paint residue, something that would identify the culprit. Instead, the damage raised more questions than answers. The cockpit glass was cracked through multiple layers, but not punctured. There were microscopic scorch marks along the outer surface and traces of material that didn't match any known aircraft paint, bird tissue, or space debris coatings. The impact force was strong enough to fracture the glass and injure the pilot, but not catastrophic. The flight crew reported seeing a flash of light milliseconds before the strike. No one saw an incoming object. No radar tracked anything in the area. The NTSB labeled it, at least temporarily, as a collision with unidentified airborne object. What could reach 36,000 feet? To understand the mystery, we need to consider what even exists at that altitude. 36,000 feet sits in the lower stratosphere, above most weather systems, below space. The air is thin, cold, and nearly devoid of moisture. Only a few things travel there: commercial aircraft, military jets, balloons, and small fragments of meteorites or orbital debris. But each of these explanations has major problems. Birds? Impossible. The altitude and speed make survival unthinkable. Drones or balloons? Unlikely. Consumer or weather balloons can reach high altitudes, but they drift slowly and would leave a soft impact. A drone capable of colliding at jet speed and surviving the atmosphere's thin air doesn't exist, at least not publicly. Meteorite fragments? Possible, but rare. A meteorite entering the atmosphere typically travels at tens of thousands of miles per hour, far faster than any aircraft. If a fragment had survived to 36,000 feet, it would have burned brighter, likely been detected by radar, and caused much more catastrophic damage. The damage pattern. Experts studying the cockpit photos noticed something particularly odd. The fracture lines on the windshield radiated outward from a central impact point, barely 2 centimeters wide. There was a circular, melted pattern around it, as if the glass had been exposed to a burst of energy, not just a blunt strike. Chemical analysis later showed traces of nickel and magnesium, both common in aerospace alloys, but not in civilian aircraft operating in that region at that time. This raised a troubling possibility. Could it have been a fragment from another aircraft? Mid-air collisions do occur, but rarely without radar detection. Air traffic logs showed no other aircraft within 25 nautical miles of Flight 515's path. Military radar confirmed there were no training exercises or weapons tests in that corridor that day. Yet some kind of object, metallic, fast-moving and small, clearly hit the plane. Witness accounts. Several passengers seated near the front reported hearing a bang, followed by a flash of white light from the cockpit. One said it was like a camera flash, but much brighter. Another described a streak, almost like lightning, but horizontal. Those accounts drew attention from meteor experts and atmospheric scientists, who suggested a rare but real phenomenon known as a bolide microfragment, a tiny piece of space rock that explodes high in the atmosphere, sending plasma-like debris sideways at incredible speed. Such fragments can momentarily glow and strike objects before vaporizing completely. If one passed near the plane, it could explain both the flash and the scorching pattern. But again, there were no meteor detections on NASA's all-sky fireball network that day. If it was a bolide, it was an exceptionally stealthy one. Theories and speculation. With no concrete explanation, speculation ran wild online. A few aviation enthusiasts blamed rogue space junk. Some pointed to classified military projects, suggesting that an unannounced hypersonic test vehicle might have passed too close. Others, predictably, invoked UFOs, but even scientists entertained the unknown. One aerospace engineer noted that the speed differential between the plane and the object must have been enormous. He calculated that for an impact to fracture the windshield without punching through, the object's relative velocity was likely between 200 and 400 miles per hour, not tens of thousands. The United Airlines cockpit impact stands as one of the strangest aviation incidents in recent history, a physical collision with an object that science can't fully identify. It left behind real damage, real injuries, and real questions. In a world where we can map distant galaxies and monitor every satellite, there are still moments when the unknown passes right through our backyard. And sometimes it leaves a mark. Until we find better answers, Flight 515 remains a modern mystery in the skies. Proof that even in the age of precision and data, the universe still finds ways to surprise us. If you enjoyed this deep dive story, hit like, subscribe, and share to keep this channel flying. And tell us, what do you think hit that plane at 36,000 feet? Was it a fragment from space, a test gone wrong, or something we can't yet explain? Let us know your theory in the comments, because sometimes the truth is still up there.